nor odd, but to be focused on how we fight in a way that shows the vast majority of this country that we're on their side. And we should recognize he's going to try to do damage in a whole bunch of different ways, like the attack on birthright citizenship. That's going to go to court. It's going to lose in court. Democratic, governors and attorney generals, including my own here in Wisconsin, have Governor Evers and Attorney General Call have already launched a lawsuit to try to defeat it. That's going to play out in court. That will not be the thing that the general public winds up defining the battle of this next era on. And so we should fight for our values across the board. But where we bring public attention, where we laser focus what everyone in this country needs to know has just happened, has to be on things that divide Republicans, unite Democrats, independents, people who hate politics around things that matter to the vast majority of people in this country. And I think that prescription drug costs is a perfect example of that. Something where almost everyone in this country knows that every time you fill a prescription, you're probably being ripped off, that there are people making billions and billions of dollars on jacking up the prices for drugs that everybody needs that cost almost nothing to produce. Then there's plenty of incentives to make those things. And what Republicans want is a situation where the price can be sky high, even for generic drugs, even if it means that people have to break pills in half because they can't afford to fill their prescription again. And that should be infuriating, and it is, and it's incredibly politically unpopular, and Trump is on the wrong side of it. And what Trump tries to do is he tries to bury these political poison pills in the midst of this avalanche of other stuff so that Democrats never actually get the word out about the way that he's attacking the vast majority of Americans, even people who voted for him. If we can put those things front and center in the conversation, we have the chance to end his honeymoon before it begins and begin the shift back to the kind of country we need to build.
Ben, what do you think the theme of Democratic messaging should be? I know that it's early. I know that we probably are going to contend with some issues that we don't even know exist yet. And you know the way that the news cycle just kind of takes a mind of its own once something happens. But judging right now from what you can see, from how you can read the tea leaves, and from what we already know about Donald Trump's stated goals in his second term, what do you presume that the overarching theme that Democrats need to hold on to as we fight against Donald Trump will be?
Well, we know that most people in this country are not incredibly wealthy and don't just watch their stock dividends rise to figure out how much money they can spend on their third home. Most Americans work for a living, and the fight for working people has always been the soul of the Democratic Party when we win elections. And when I say working people, I mean across race, across ethnicity, rural areas, suburb cities. I mean most people in all communities in all states around this country, they're middle class or working class folks or people who aspire to be in the middle class, who work incredibly hard, or who aspire to work and have barriers to being able to work. It's people who don't have a bunch of wealth cushioning their lives, for whom it actually matters how much things cost and whether they can join a union and whether they have protections at their workplace and whether they can see a doctor without having to worry about bankruptcy. For people who need to know that the government's on their side when it comes to their basic needs, from being able to raise a kid to being able to retire with dignity, seeing that Democrats fight for them against the people who are trying to rip them off and exploit them, that is the uniting thing that is at the heart of building economic solidarity that allows us to fight for freedom and for justice and recognition across every other dimension of what we care about. So that to me has to be at the start of this. And that's a partnership with the union movement, and it's a partnership with people who disagree on lots of other stuff, that this should be a country where there's a basic kind of economic freedom, a decency that we ensure that everybody has, and that Trump does not believe in. And that contrast allows us to be able to win fights and make progress on every front.
Okay, so let me push back on that for a moment, because Democrats have shown this by virtue of their actions, right? Democrats cap the cost of insulin at $35, of inhalers at $35, out-of-pocket healthcare costs at $2,000, eliminated junk fees at banks. They're the party that protects Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. They're the party that made sure veterans had healthcare with the PACT Act. So they have shown by virtue of their actions that they are the party that's looking out for working class people. All Donald Trump did with his time in office in the first term was a tax cut that overwhelmingly favored millionaires and billionaires. And yet still, this election was largely a referendum on culture war issues that Republicans were able to insert into the zeitgeist by virtue of their money and the size of their their creator class, their independent media class, and just the influence that they had more broadly. And so just from my perspective, it almost feels like you can do all this stuff, but at the end of the day, because Republicans control so much of the infrastructure that delivers the messaging to people, it almost just falls on deaf ears. And so I know that's a big problem, and I'm asking you how to solve a big problem here, but that is a problem.
So this is the irony, is that Democrats actually do walk the walk. The problem is that we don't have a big enough megaphone that when we talk the talk, anyone actually hears it.
Right.
And it's not that we cannot stop walking the walk. We actually we have to have policies that reflect what everybody needs. But we need to break through the wall of propaganda in a way that right now we're not successfully doing. Because right now, most people get their news about Democrats from Republicans.
Right.
And Republicans, their goal always is to say to voters, to you, the voter, that Democrats care about someone other than you. And their lie is always that if someone other than you gets something, then you're losing something, and the Democrats are trying to take from you to give to somebody else. And that's they choose different villains every time. This time it was
gay people, trans people, brown people,
black people, the immigrants, like whatever it is. It's some them. And this time they went for the smallest them so that they could have the biggest us that felt ripped off by the them that they were narrating. To beat that, we need to. When I say that we need to fight, it's not just that we need to have a good bill or policy that we put forward. We need to fight for it in a way that makes Republicans have to react to that, to show that they're actually on the side that's trying to rip everybody off. And I think we can look to the fight against the repeal of healthcare in 2017 for an example of that kind of battle. Because Republicans, they were so fired up about this. They were going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They were going to gut Medicaid. It's their number one legislative priority. Trump had promised to do it on day one. And they went into that fight. And then people whose lives were on the line, people whose kids might not survive if they didn't have their health care, they were on the front lines of that battle confronting Republicans directly in a way that made the Republicans just melt. They were canceling their town halls across the country. They were, retreating into their locked offices in the Capitol because people who were directly affected by their terrible policies were out there protesting, out there talking to the media that had shown up in droves because there was actual conflict on something that touched something that was core to people's lives. And that means a different way of thinking about how we communicate. That means both breaking through the stranglehold of conservative media and propaganda, and also dramatizing the stakes in the fight. That's what unions do when they go on strike. They actually, a picket line is literally a line of people that if you cross it, you are a scab and you're breaking that strike. And it makes it very clear that everyone has to choose whose side they're on. And that kind of fight can help demonstrate to the country what is going on in these battles. And right now, as we talk right now, Trump is meeting with Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, to plan out a multi-trillion-dollar tax cut for billionaires and big corporations. And the way we fight against that can help to demonstrate what the battle lines here truly are. The Republican con is always to try to divide and distract people so that they can grab money and hand it to people who already have an enormous amount of money and power. And they're doing it again in front of us. And once again, it's this flurry, this big bang of every possible distraction and attack, often attacking things that are important because they want us to move our attention there in a way that allows them to sneak out, with all the money in the Treasury. So we need to be in this fight in a way that people see that we actually mean it, that we're fighting for them, that there's a bad guy in the fight who's trying to rip them off, and that it's people power that's going to be able to take that on. And then communicate that everywhere. Not just walk the walk, but talk the talk through the biggest megaphones we can possibly build.
Okay, so let's switch gears here to the DNC. Again, you're running for chair of the DNC. What are the biggest issues right now that you're looking at with the DNC, and what would you do to change them?
Well, the first one is exactly this. It's how we communicate. And that right now, the DNC is kind of, rolling. There's great people who work there, but it is not reaching a ton of people in their lives with messages that actually sink in, that show that we're on their side. And things like the rapid response Twitter and Blue Sky accounts, those things are important. But there's so many places where people make sense of the world, including for younger people. It's a million YouTube shows. There's streaming, all these different streamers. There's long form podcasts. There's all these different places where people actually go to figure out what's going on, and building deep long-term relationships with the creators who are powering those conversations, and with creators who are not fundamentally political, who are talking about sports and fashion and beauty and personal money management and all the things that make up regular life for people. That we need to be in the conversation with folks who are doing that kind of communicating, so that when things come up, we can make sure that creators are equipped to be able to say, hey, it's Republicans are about to destroy this entire thing because they're about to, bankrupt the federal government to help a handful of ultra rich people. To be able to connect with people outside the sphere of what feels like talking points and what feels like political theater. And I think that the building a national war room, building in-state war rooms that look at where people actually